Yeah, Olga, it was really hard for me to even get here on time to do this because I've been talking about the topic all morning. Friday mornings is my kind of my guys group. We meet at coffee and talk about life and talk about stuff. And this is what we talked about. It's a topic I have been so interested in and enamored with and debated about for so long is personality. And is it hardwired? Is it nature versus nurture? So I love your focus on it. I love your take on it. And I have questions. You ready?
Yeah, yeah, totally. Let's do it.
I really wanted, I mean, so you came to this at the start of the book and kind of the start of this journey. And when you hit this and said, okay, I'm gonna take, I think initially you took like a month or something and focused on personality, then a year. Am I right? Were you about 36? Is that
I think when I first started working on this, I was 35.
okay?
hmm
Had you, so if I kind of put the umbrella under the or over the examined life, I mean, this is taking the proverbial mirror and looking at it and going, okay, had you done that before? Did you have some times of what I'm going to call personal evolutions before that? Or was this kind of the initial reckoning?
I would say I did. I had a big personal evolution when I first started my journalism career. A
Okay.
lot of young people have a personal evolution when they first get their career going, and especially when they commit to a career that they're passionate about. It really gives you a motivation to become, in my case, a lot more conscientious. And for a lot of other people, that is also the change that they see happening around that time. So this just basically means buckling down, working a lot harder, being more organized, being on time, being more productive. Before I really started to pursue journalism, I was a little bit more spacey. Like I kind of just I would say go with the flow, but I honestly didn't go with the flow. I just like didn't really get things done on time, and I was just really disorganized. And so it was really journalism that made me become a lot more precise, organized, timely, kind of all those conscientious virtues. So yeah, that was sort of my big metamorphosis in my mid 20s.
So would you call it you said conscientious. That's an interesting word. A maturing but also an awareness of like, well, kind of, what the kids these days would call adulting, is the
Yes.
word. Was it kind of that like, oh, okay, things just got a little more serious. They got serious, or I want them to be serious. So, okay, mature a little bit, Olga. And so it was, but it was an awareness, it sounds like, of some personal propensities that you wanted to, I'm going to use the word evolve at the time.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly right. And actually adulting is a great phrase for it because adulting is totally real. Like so there's this concept in personality psychology called the maturity principle, which is basically means adulting. Like at a certain point we all start adulting, we all become more conscientious and sort of less spastic and less of a moody kind of teenager. And I definitely did too, just like everyone else. To give you an example, when I was in high school, I got a full scholarship to college, but I actually didn't know it until the day before the deadline to like accept the scholarship and say yes to the college because I kept all my mail in a giant like leaning tower of mail in my room, and I didn't open any of my mail. I just like got letters and put them in a big stack, even if it was like college acceptance letters. And that was just like sort of how I approached life. I was just like, whatever, like who cares, I don't, and so I would never think to do that now. Like I don't think I've ever even like paid a bill not on time as an adult. But that's because I've matured.
Yeah. That's interesting. Unfortunately, I'm still that way a bit. I did that kind of the leaning tower of letters. I did that, had one from the IRS, opened it yesterday, and it was actually money. I haven't gotten money myself. So
Amazing.
I know it's just probably a mistake. Okay. So, so you've done a little bit of evolving, time goes on, maybe a decade ish
hmm
more. And then you find yourself, can we say dissatisfied with, well, that's a question. Because you literally, actually, I was looking on, I think it was like your Instagram page, and it showed you on another show or something like that. And it said something to the effect of you didn't like who you were. And I wanted to question that. Is that honest? Is that accurate that you, to some degree, didn't like who you are, or you just didn't like how you were being? I feel like those are important differentiations. Well, I'll leave it to you.
Yeah, I think I didn't like how I was being is maybe a better way
Okay.
of putting it than I put it myself. So I definitely liked elements of who I am. So I am very conscientious. I do have a great job. I have a good life. Like I have, built this life, and I did it with my own, strengths that I have and that I recognize. But at the same time, I was sort of not really enjoying my life. Like I kind of, I was really socially isolated. I was really anxious all the time. I had a tendency toward depression, kind of never satisfied. I love your mug. Um, Great movie. I kind of just was, I was just like never joyful, never appreciating anything, never really having fun. And that was sort of what I didn't like, is that I had sort of like worked myself into this corner where I didn't really like the way I had structured my life.
It's an important, or I interest myself a lot with that when we look at personality change, I mean, you literally, that's in the title or the subtitle of your book. Change. Do we really want to change our personality? I question it. We talk about it in this arena of self-improvement, self-help, and personal development of change. And yet I'm sometimes wondering for myself and for others that sometimes, do I really want to change, or do I just want different results? And I think that's valid. And yet what I was thinking on as I was reading your book is, I guess it comes down to what our goals are, and are we satisfied? So you're saying there were some areas of my life, some realities, if we can call that, but some aspects that you were seeing, I'm not really satisfied with what I'm getting, with what I'm feeling. And I want to feel different. Thus, I guess I have to actually change. Well, again, change who I am or how I am, or do you put those together?
Yeah, so I would say both who I am and how I am. So most types of change, like when we talk about any kind of change, self-improvement, personal growth, any of that, most of that is personality change. Like I wish there was a better way of describing it other than personality change, but personality is sort of the foundation of so much of our lives. So if you're trying to become less anxious through something like therapy, that's personality change. If you're trying to make new friends by being more outgoing, that's personality change. If you're trying to improve your relationships, by being nicer to your spouse or to your kids, that's personality change. Even something like drinking less is personality change. So to me, it was sort of like realizing that so much of like what I wanted and what I was aiming for was actually personality change.
Okay. Again, these are topics that I grapple with. I always have. I always have. So we're bringing them to light here, because even as you say that personality change, and I'm wondering, do you differentiate between have you really, how much have you actually changed the personality as opposed to just change the behavior? So take wine, for instance, which I adore, actually. I would be happy with a bottle of wine every single day. That would be good. That is my personality, apparently. Now, I don't do that. However, I've altered my behavior because I don't want the results of the hangover and the fuzziness in my creative life and whatnot. So I do moderate it. I think I've thought about that as a behavior change as opposed to personality change. Where do you do you draw a line? It's an honest question. I mean, I'm thinking about myself. Where have I changed my personality as opposed to just my behavior? What do you think for you?
Yeah, I mean, so that's like the way you describe it is sort of like how AA thinks of it, like, right? So they're like, I'm an alcoholic, like, even if they haven't
Fair,
had a drink for like, 20 years or something, right?
fair. Okay.
So they think that it's like your personality doesn't change and it's just your behavior that is like almost like temporarily changing, but hopefully forever. So I actually see it a little bit differently. I think that what happens is we see ourselves behaving in certain ways. And then after a while, we almost sort of like have to admit that our personality is different. So
Hmm.
for me, an example of this is that I earlier in my life, especially like in high school, I really, really strongly identified as an introvert, and basically was like, if I ever have to give a talk to a group of people or honestly interact with strangers in any way, which I do now like 24/7, that I would just like melt. Like, I cannot do this. It's against my nature. Like, I absolutely can't. This would make me so uncomfortable. But now I honestly have to say that I do it so much and I've gotten so comfortable with it that I'm not totally sure I'm like a hardcore introvert anymore. Like, I would have to say that I'm like somewhere on the midline. Like, sometimes I even feel like I'm more of an extrovert than an introvert. Like, I honestly, like, you after seeing these behaviors add up, they kind of become a reflection of you and you incorporate them into your identity, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I'm thinking about, no, I appreciate that because I have always struggled with the kind of AA thing of, yeah, you haven't had a drink in 20 years and yet you're still supposed to say you're an alcoholic. I struggle, and it got me thinking about sugar. I used to be a sugaraholic, said I didn't have a sweet tooth. I have a sweet belly. I mean, I'm not going to eat one M&M. I'm going to eat the whole, 5-pound bag. And I'm not anymore. I've changed it because I wanted a different outcome. So I changed the behavior and now I literally don't want it. So I would say, yeah, personality change in that aspect is legitimate. That's helpful again, that's why I wanted to hit this. When you go back to the beginning of your book of saying, okay, I'm going to take a year, and work on my personality. I'm curious, what would you say the percentage of differentiation is from then to now?
Well, it was pretty significant. I mean, so I took these personality tests the whole time. I used this professor's like personality testing website.
Oh, we're going to talk about it. I went and took it.
Okay. So I was like testing myself. So I had really clear results. So I was, in the, I think I was extremely high on neuroticism when I started and it went down to low. I was, extremely low on extroversion and it went up to, I think, medium high. Agreeableness bopped around a little bit more. Like, I was like medium and then I went down to low and then I went up to like medium again. Like, that one is a little bit harder to change. But yeah, so I would say that I changed pretty significantly. And then people that I interviewed for like some of the other traits that wasn't personally working on, they changed like quite a bit. Like, I talked to some people who honestly turned their lives around, quit drinking or started a business that required a lot of scheduling and organizational skills that they didn't have before. So you can really change quite a bit.
What would your husband say
Mm.
to that question of, okay, here is Olga pre all this stuff. Now she's here, whether it's a percentage of change or like, okay, what's his name? I forgot.
It's Rich. So I texted him and asked him about this recently. I was
Oh,
like,
sweet.
what do you think of my new personality? Because I wanted to have it handy.
And I appreciate you in the book saying that he was consistently just supportive of, I dig you how you are.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm okay with your neuroticism. I'm okay. So a great guy, it seems like. But yeah, I was curious as to what would he say? Like, gosh, I saw her this way before and now I see her this way or
He's,
experience her.
he says, for me, it's not like I love you more. It's just that maybe I feel a little bit more loved and less worried about you being so worried.
Okay. I was almost would you say he feels, well, that would, like safety, from an emotional standpoint or relations, he feels safe or more at peace with
Yeah,
where you are and you guys together.
I think he feels more loved and kind of accepted for who he is, which is good. He also, I mean, importantly, like I think this project really brought down my anxiety levels enough to allow me to have a baby, which has been like a huge disruptor and also stressor in our lives. And also wonderful and awesome, but like, if I'm being honest, like that in itself is a stressor. So, um, but I think it was really key that my anxiety came down enough that I was able to actually do that, because that was honestly the main thing. I know that a lot of people don't want kids for other reasons and valid reasons, but for me, it was my anxiety kind of standing in the way.
Okay. I want to add, you mentioned just a minute ago, increasing in your comfort level with extroversion in essence. So you're an introvert, you weren't okay, you weren't satisfied, fulfilled with some of those aspects, you wanted different results. So you did the exercises as you talk about in the book, you did XYZ. Reminded me of the movie Yes Man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
You're like, okay, yes, sure, I'll go and,
Uh-huh.
date a foreign student or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And, or go to that party or whatever. So you did that and you testified a minute ago. Well, my paraphrasing that you grew in comfort with that. On the introversion extroversion aspect, and my context here coming into the question, Olga, is that I spent a majority of my life, I'm going to say, performing as an extrovert because of the results that I got, the accolades I got, there were some good things from that. But I kind of did it to such a degree I burnt out, and then really found in my own pursuit of personality that, man, I'm an introvert. That's where I get my energy. So
Mhm.
I can go extrovert, but then I'm really looking forward to getting away, and I mean getting away, solitude, and giving myself energy. Do you feel like that aspect, if I can put it into an energy type aspect, it remained true? You are more comfortable with extroverting, but if you are, well, answer that too. If you are a hardwired or predispositioned introvert, that's still a place of greater comfort or energy for you?
That's interesting. Okay, this is so I'm so glad you brought this up. So there's a few things here. So first of all, no one is a complete introvert or extrovert. Like it's very unlikely that you've ever met someone who's completely one way or the other.
Great.
And actually, what you're describing is this phenomenon that I also write about. So some psychologists think of it as personality change, like you change and then oh you're different, right? Some think of it more as this concept called free traits, which is that you can kind of like try on new personality traits to meet the demands of the moment. So let's say you are giving a big talk for a big audience because it's part of your job, but you are very naturally introverted. You basically can kind of like try on extroversion, like it's almost like a cape or something for that talk. And it sounds like that's kind of what you were doing. And kind of like push yourself to be more extroverted in order to get those results. But then what these free trait psychologists say is that you can get burned out because it can be too much. It's very hard to maintain that level of socializing, for hours and hours or day after day. And so a lot of people who do that do end up having to kind of like retreat back. And it's called a restorative niche. And that is that like alone time where you're just kind of by yourself, strumming your guitar, petting your cat, whatever it is, you need to do. And you really can bring yourself back to homeostasis or just like feeling good again. And that is sort of that feeling of like getting your energy back. So that's totally valid. Like that is still a example of personality change or call it like personality flexibility, where you can kind of adapt your personality to meet the demands of the moment. I would say for me, I occasionally have situations where I am truly the demands of extroversion are so severe that I'm like, this is too much.
Yeah.
But I also have found that like sometimes I can get too much introversion too. Like I can have too much alone time. I can feel like I'm too in my head or I've spent too much time by myself or I need to get out and talk to some people. Like I'm getting stir crazy. I get that way a lot. And so that kind of convinced me that I'm not a complete introvert because it doesn't always give me energy. Sometimes it kind of sometimes, meeting up with someone and sharing ideas gives me energy.
That's interesting to me because I have that propensity. I can do the hermit thing. I
Mhm.
really, well, but even there, like you, I am writing and communicating. So even though I'm hermiting, I'm communicating with people. I'm writing stuff. I'm putting it out. I'm getting feedback. So maybe I'm not truly introverting, but I like your word. I wrote it down: personality flexibility.
Yeah.
Is that fair to say? Okay, let's again looking at this introversion extroversion, that you seem to be fairly have a high propensity for introversion. You exercised some extroversion and have become, I said, more comfortable, but more flexible with that. You can do that, and yet maybe your core still is primarily introverted. How's that come across?
Yeah, that is a concept that a lot of personality psychologists think is more kind of adaptive than thinking of yourself as one way or another. It's this idea that like we all are going to have demands placed on us by life, right? Like even if you're the world's biggest introvert, you still are going to have to give a bridesmaid speech
Yeah.
or some work presentation. Like we're all going to have to do things that involve different skills of a different kind of personality trait that we're not used to using. I did not think of myself as like someone who was very motherly or like had the like sweet, like it's okay, sweetie, like kind of talk. But it came really naturally to me after I had my son. We all have kind of like traits that we can kind of I guess switch on when the moment calls for it.
Agreed. I do feel like the parent one's different. I am not a kid person. I don't want to hang out with your baby or your toddler and gaga and whatever, but I adored my little kids.
Yeah,
So,
I feel the same way. I feel the same way, honestly.
okay. Okay. So Olga, literally 48 hours ago, or was it yesterday? It was yesterday, or the day before. I had this question sent to me by a listener who's become a friend. So she texted me, or I don't know where it was. She messaged me. She said I had to complete a pair evaluation. P period, A period, I period, R period. I had not heard about it. It's
Hmm.
personality awareness inventory for relationships, but she did it for work. But she asked me if I'm familiar with that. She said, I struggled answering the questions about myself because I have changed so much in the past 2 years. It's made me wonder if we're born with these personalities or if they are developed because of our environment. Thoughts? She asked me. I gave her that. I gave her my thoughts on that, but I thought I just pasted it in. I thought, hey, let's bring it to you right here because I think that's a continued question. It's the nature versus nurture. How much can we really change? Do we really want to change? I'll let you answer it though.
Yeah. So that's very perceptive of her to recognize that. So the answer is both. We are born with some propensities towards certain personality traits. So if you think about it, like if both of your parents are super introverted, there's a good likelihood that you will be somewhat introverted at least, right? Like sort of like if both your parents are tall, you will probably be kind of tall. Um, Unlike height, however, there's also about 50% of your personality that is like wiggle room. Like basically it's your environment, including environments that you put yourself into. So it's not just like the way you're raised or like whether you have brothers and sisters. It's also what kind of job do you have? What kind of relationships do you start? What kind of friends do you seek out? Where do you choose to live? Do you go to college? All of these things exert a force on our personality, and then the activities that we do day to day, our habits and behaviors kind of further shape our personality. So you kind of both get a certain deck of cards when you're born, but you also like shuffle those cards and you get new cards from the middle of the pile and you give away some cards. Like you don't end up with exactly what you were dealt with.
Well, thanks. Because I have, so I grew up with a dad who personal development was kind of his religion.
Uh-huh.
So, I don't know, 10 years old, taking personality tests, the next one and the next one, taking so many, whether it's the DISC or the Enneagram or the Myers-Briggs, or I've forgotten more than I've taken. to the point to where it's really hard to take them. Well, okay, I'll jump there. I'll jump there next. But I did get to the point also, well, of grappling with, holy heck, I don't know how much am I programmed? How much is from my exposure as a kid? How much different would I have been? So I grew up in a small town in Kentucky with an entrepreneurial dad who's pursuing personal development. How much different, who would I be if I grew up in, I don't know, LA in the middle of the city with a dad who was a brain surgeon in a gated community driving Mercedes and very academic focused as opposed to entrepreneurial. And I kind of got to the point of going, I have no idea, like, how on earth am I supposed to know who I am? And to that point, and I'll go into the next part, I struggled with the personality profiles because I'm sitting here self-reporting and I'm looking at it and going, how am I naturally? I don't know. And I'm trying to like get in this space of be the natural Kevin and answer it authentically. Who's the natural Kevin? Do you align with any of that struggle?
Yeah, I totally get what you're saying. I mean, so our parents don't like the way they raise us doesn't like perfectly influence our personality. Like it's very tempting to look back, and like people who are in therapy like often look back on their childhood, and there is your parents, like everyone's parents, like did stuff that benefited them and also probably damaged them a little bit, right?
Yeah,
like all of our parents like kind of do good things and bad things, and but they're not like perfectly programming our personality down to the trait with whatever it is they're doing. Like that, a lot of our personality development happens after we become adults and start making our own choices. So I would say, like, if that LA life had steered you down a different path of becoming a Hollywood producer, who made tons of money and like didn't care about relationships, I don't know, whatever, I'm concocting this fake person, but you would probably have a slightly different personality than you do now because of choices that you had made, because of maybe some different directions that your parents had steered you in. But what I was going to say is, like, knowing what's authentic. The personality tests that I took, they're all self-report. It's very hard to take a personality test that's not self-report, but it's kind of like mostly agree, or like somewhat, sometimes, often, always, never, and so it's more about like what you tend to do or what you feel like comes most often, rather than like complete yes or no. And then the personality test that I like, or the one that I kind of did in the book, it puts you kind of on a spectrum for each of the traits. So you don't have to worry so much about, am I an introvert or an extrovert? It's more like, okay, I'm at like 60% introverted, or something like that. So I don't know, to me, that kind of helps mitigate the like stress of like, which am I? Like, am I an INTJ or not?
I did. So I went and took it. I'll probably put this in the intro, but I went there. I went to personalityassessor.com. And I had not heard, out of all the ones that I've done, I don't remember this one. So thanks. So I went and I took that. I did it pretty quickly at this point. I don't overthink. I just kind of blurted out, but I did it right away. I have interest. It was so brief. I thought I'd be interested in having those closest to me take it for me and see what the response. I think I will do that. I didn't do that before this, but have some of my kids take it. I was just talking with my best friend and, have him take it for me. Like, how would you respond? That would be, have you done that?
No, I have not done that. But one of the studies that I write about on personality change. So the way these studies were done is like they went to a bunch of college kids and they were like, do you want to change your personality? I think some of them are college kids. Some of them are just adults. They said, yes, I want to change this trait and this trait. And they said, here are some things that you can do to change those traits. And then they did them, and then those traits changed. So one of the researchers that I write about, Miriam Steiger in Switzerland, she actually did that. She had other people like judge the personalities of these like her study subjects. Like, did they actually change? And they said that they had, like, these like outside observers, their friends and family, we're like, yeah, she really has changed, or he really has changed. So that kind of gives us a little bit more validity for what's actually happening, because it seems like the change is noticeable to other people.
Fair enough. On the self-reporting aspect, yeah, I struggle with, I, I have to put myself in that headspace of how am I, how am I really, looking in the mirror, how am I really, as opposed to how do I want to be? And even how do I strive to be, kind of that, okay, I'm not going to react that way in public, to someone, but I know inside I'm really feeling impatient,
Yeah.
but I'm going to act patiently. And so I tried to answer it to that degree and be honest. And I think I am, because some of my stuff came back a little troubling. And I
That's
don't think
okay.
I'm that, I don't think I'm that disagreeable, but my agreeableness is way down there if I'm honest. I think it's fair.
Mine was really low. The first test I took, actually, like one of the researchers I interviewed was like, "Whoa, it's rare for a woman's to be that low."
Mine again, I did it, I think it was yesterday, 25th percentile.
Yeah, mine was like in the like 30th or something. I don't know.
Okay. So yeah, mine's, well, so let's talk about them. Let's go through them.
Sure.
I want to do that a bit, to talk about it. Cause when it comes on extroversion, so extroversion is the first one. You said that you were really low and you saw that depicted in your life. And that was, that was almost the primary area of dissatisfaction for you. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a big one. I just I felt like, I mean, COVID obviously happened and everyone felt really disconnected, but even before COVID, I honestly just didn't have many friends. And I've lived in DC for a really long time. It's not like I just moved. I just kind of was really socially isolated.
You actually say, okay, I'm scrolling down to find this because I pulled it out of the book, and you related to, actually, you said, here's the quote I pulled out. And although introversion is not a flaw, studies show extroverts are happier. Okay, I don't like that statement. Because I do feel like we're in this performance culture. I'm kind of dealing with this in some other areas of, well, I'm a podcaster, so I'm putting content out, and you've got social media and you've got whatever. And I feel like, oh my gosh, everything keeps veering and veering and veering to just, we're only hearing from those who are huge performers, and they're putting content out, and they're, I'm going to exaggerate it. They're singing and dancing and doing pyrotechnics and whatever. I'm thinking it has nothing to do with the content.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You're a personal development person, and you got you're in that way now. You've got a book coming out, and you're supposed to go sing and dance and do the stuff and be super extroverted. And we award that. And yet when I look at the, how can I say this with a political correctness? At the majority of teachers, trainers, even if we look at university professors, they're by far and large, I went and did some, looked up some studies. They're by far and large more introverted people. They're the kind of people who do the research to pursue. Robert Waldinger, he's the A Good Life, and he's pursued. He's the director of this study that's gone on for whatever 4 generations or whatnot. And he's the kind of guy who commits to the research and the face to face, dealing with this and going down that. He's not a super extroverted guy. So I don't like that statement. And yet you're looking at it and going, okay, I guess it depends on your goals personally. Can we say that? Extroversion, introversion, I don't know. How's it coming out for you? Are you okay with it? Is that fair?
Yeah, I also didn't like it when I came across all those studies. I was like, shut up. Let me watch Great British Bake Off in peace. I also didn't want to be told that extroverts are happier. So I would say what those studies are picking up really is just the level of social connection that you have in your life. And it doesn't have to be that you go to clubs and parties every night and hang out with people and you're the talk of the town and you're constantly just the center of attention. Sonia Lubomirsky, one of the people that I interviewed for the book, is a happiness researcher, and she really underscores that feeling like we have people in our corner, feeling like we have a community is really the key to happiness. And the reason why extroverts come out as looking happier is because they can look around and see like that person, that person, that person, that person. They're all on my team. I'm connected to them socially. What you can do as an introvert, if you're not wanting to be super loud and talkative and get out, if you want to live a more, I don't know, quiet life, I guess, you can have a social community where you're not the center of attention. Like, you can go to a book club and listen more than you talk, or listen to other people's takes on the book. You can go to church. You can go to, another community where people are not just like bah, 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 like talking. You can be more reserved and still have a big community. And I think that's really what that research is getting at. And what I also figured out once I stopped being mad.
Well, I appreciate that. So let's go this way. We're saying, we can look at the happiness research. I just mentioned Robert Waldinger. So he's the, the Grant study, I think, this longest running research on human behavior or whatever. And, happiness. And of course, what does it come out as? What creates happiness? And it's relationships. Okay. And when we did done a couple shows with him. When we did that, we talked about, relationships, but that doesn't mean there's not some definition of what that looks like. Does that mean you have to have 100 friends or 2 friends? Or, what do you do with your friends? Do you talk about this? Or you talk about this? It was helpful for me because I realized that, I know the benefit of relationships. So I'm not going to be a hermit who knows nobody, but I don't want a truckload. I want a few really tight ones. And I'm not the guy that's going to come and talk about sports and cars and whatever. We're going to talk about how to change your personality and stuff so I'm going to connect with those people. So I do have a social outlet, but it is geared towards my bent. Is that fair?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And the researchers who study this really don't put a number on how many friends you have to have. It's definitely not 100. I would say, like, if you can get 2, 3, 4 people together, like in an emergency, it's really all about feeling supported. Like, you're not totally alone in the universe, that if you're having a problem, you have someone to talk to. And that's really, like, though that doesn't sound like extroversion, that's like the kinds of things that extroverts have been able to cultivate over time because they happen to be more outgoing. But you can also cultivate it if you're not, quote unquote, naturally outgoing.
Okay. It's got me thinking about it just like exercise. So whether you enjoy exercise, I do. I really enjoy. It's been a part of my life. I was a pro athlete and whatever. So I love doing that. So somebody else doesn't. Okay, well, you don't need to do as much as I do, but if you're going to be healthy and well, you kind of need to move. So regardless of whether you like it or not, it's probably best to move. Is that, it feels like a fair analogy to, I'm an introvert. I'm kind of just happy being by myself, but I do kind of, there are benefits of relationships. So I'm going to have to go out. So last night I went to an event. I hung out with the one guy that I knew and talked. I didn't chit chat with other people. And when it was over, I left, but I was there. So I made some connection. I did meet one person. That's true. But it's something so you're looking at that. That's part of your story. You kind of exercise that because you want some of the benefits, but you didn't go full tilt and you're not queen extrovert today, but you're benefiting from personality flexibility.
That's right. Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. And exercise, is a great analogy for that. So I was part of a happy hour group for a while that this guy, like a friend of a friend, organized, and he really ran the group. Like, he brought everyone together. He found the spot. He got there first and held down the table. Everyone came. It was like, Greg's group. Everyone came and had a good time. And he paid the whole tab and figured out how much everyone owed at the end. He really was the person who made this happen. And I would say he said maybe 5 words every time. He really did not talk very much at all. I would not say this naturally very extroverted activity, he's an introvert. He's very quiet and reserved, and it was enough for him to be around other people and hear them talk and weigh in occasionally, but not be the one telling the loudest stories or the most stories. So I think that's totally valid.
All right. I could probably stay on that one the rest of our time together, but I'll go to agreeableness here. So on that one, so it's interesting. So Olga, I got mine's 25th percentile, which surprises even me. I think I have to go back and look at the questions. I mean, again, I just try to answer them authentically. I'm a people pleaser. I don't cause, ripples in things. I'm gonna kind of please things. I like to keep the peace in that sense. I don't like conflict, but I am fairly rebellious with a lot of the stuff within our culture, and it fits my introversion. I kind of do my own thing. And I'm wondering if that's where it came out with it. Naturally, I'm not super agreeable, even though I will behave that way. Is that relevant?
Yeah. So do you happen to know if your agreeableness score was more brought down by the trust element or the emphasis? There's like a sympathy and a trust. Do you remember which one was low or both?
Oh no, I didn't look at it. Holy crap. Okay, this
It's
is
okay.
great. Thank you, because I got the report. I didn't even look at it. Okay, respectful. So it has compassion, respectfulness, and trust. My respectfulness, 82%.
Okay.
That lines up. I am
Hmm.
respectful to people. My compassion, seventh.
Okay.
My trust, 16th.
Okay. Okay. So it's the compassion and the trust. Okay. Um, yeah. So I think that what's happening there is that you do kind of like make an effort to be agreeable toward people, but inside you're maybe a little bit like resentful of it sometimes, or like
It
you're
looks like
kind of
I'm a respectful ass,
like no, no,
honestly.
no. You're like nice to people. You come across as respectful and like kind, but like you sometimes are like you bristle a little at like the stuff you have to do in order to get along with people. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's great. I really appreciate, I had forgotten about that. Um, you know what? On that, thanks for bringing it up, Olga. Because if I jump up to the extroversion, which I was 81st percentile, so really high on that. My assertiveness is what brought. Well, assertiveness is 94%. My energy was 85th percent, but my sociability was only 39%.
Yeah, yeah.
That 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 guy. I should have read that before we had the talk. Okay, gosh, really interesting. So on the agreeableness, when you look at that, you said yours was really low. Has that come up fairly that much for you?
Yeah, so for me, the trust element was really low, like it was
Yeah.
for you. And that's because, like, as a journalist, you really can't trust people. Like, you have to be super skeptical. And, anytime someone tells you something, you kind of have to Google it. Like, if someone tells me about a cool study, I look up the study. I look up, like, okay, what was the N? Okay, what was the P value? Like, I'm always kind of digging to see, like, is it really true? Is it really real? And I think something that happened for this book is that I was part of so many different communities of people and just like groups of people. Like anger management was a group, and the meditation class was a group, and the improv class was a group. And I kind of just got to know a lot of people and their problems because a lot of these groups were organized around talking about our problems. And I was like, oh, we're like kind of all the same. Like we're all kind of like dealing with similar stuff. And this stuff that we all think is like super unique or like, oh, only I'm like this, is
Yeah.
like sort of very common. And so I think that maybe subconsciously somehow increased my trust in other people is sort of this sense that like we're all going through something. I don't know.
That's interesting. Okay, at the sake of trying to justify my low scores here, I'm wondering about trust as well. And to some degree, I've got as I question my own identity and personality, which I do a lot lately. There's a level of aspect of I don't trust me. I'm questioning myself a lot too, as well as with other people. So the trust being low. That's oh gosh, and the compassion that I thought I was getting better. That one does bother me. It really does. I almost feel like a psychopath sometimes.
Did you
With
get did you get the question that was like I think this is on all of them, but it's like I believe we should be tough on crime.
mm-mm.
Oh, okay. I don't know if that yeah, that might be on a longer version of that test, but that one is related to agreeableness, and apparently if you think we should be tough on crime, you're like not very agreeable. But like a lot of people think we should be tough on crime because maybe they've been a victim of a crime.
Gosh, I don't
Um
know. I guess it depends on if I committed it. Let's not be so tough.
I
If
know
somebody else
exactly.
did,
Right. Yeah.
I'm gonna
Yeah,
I'm gonna
everyone's like
say it depends. Is that
yeah.
I would have done neutral on that one.
Yeah, I was like neutral, yeah. Yeah, but I mean, kind of like I think what you're kind of circling is like one way that I reconciled this feeling of like, I want to get along with people, be respectful toward other people, but not be just like a pushover, is just having really strong boundaries and kind
Yeah.
of being clear with people about what you are and are not willing to do. And for me, that really helped increase my agreeableness because I wasn't always so frustrated that I was doing stuff that I had agreed to do that I didn't really want to do. And
Yeah.
which can be something where people are like, I'm going to be more agreeable. I'm going to just say yes to whatever everyone asks of me. And then they're like, wait, I hate that person for asking too much of me. So having really, really good boundaries is like a really core component of agreeableness.
And that, I mean, Olga, that's been a lifetime problem for me. I'm in two, unfortunately, too recent of years, and dealing with for the first time is boundaries. So yeah, I would be respectful at the sake of myself, and then I would just get bitter and create distance. So that rings true.
That's a really common pattern. You're not the only one.
Okay, good. Thanks. Okay. Conscientiousness is next. Where were you on that, and how did you grow?
So starting the book, I was very conscientious because I had already had my like come to Jesus moment in my 20s where I stopped with the leaning tower of mail. So I was already very conscientious, and I stayed conscientious like throughout the chapter. But for that one, I mostly interviewed other people who sort of became more conscientious in adulthood. And another thing I did was I cut down on my drinking a lot, which is an element of conscientiousness.
How
Like
so?
during this chapter. So there's like I think it's called immoderation is like an element of conscientiousness, and people who are not very conscientious tend to overindulge in all sorts of vices. So drinking too much, like like a lot of drugs, or like overeating, like things like that. Those are all like elements of low conscientiousness. Meanwhile, people who are very conscientious tend to eat right and exercise and just be those health nuts who we all kind of
Well,
resent.
then that's interesting because I'm on the health nut side. But my conscientiousness score was really low, 32. And as I look at those, I remember some of the questions, and it says organized, responsible, orderly, and dutiful.
Mm-hmm.
Organized and orderly, I'm just not at all.
Uh-huh.
I'm not, and I don't care to be. I'd be one of
Yeah.
like, it works for me. I'm okay with that. I don't think it's harming anybody else. I might check in on that one. But those are, well, it has that organization. I was 14th percentile, responsibility 19th. I'm surprised at that.
Huh.
I'd have to think about it. And then productiveness 78th percentile.
Yeah. So it sounds like you're very productive, but it's like a little bit all over the place. Like you're,
Yeah, I would. That's actually fair. There are the things that I care about. I'll take care of. The things that I don't. So I'll just own that one. Do you remember where yours was on, if you had organization, productiveness, responsibility, highs and lows? Do you remember
yeah.
that?
So my conscientiousness score, I'm in the 93rd percentile.
Whoa. Okay.
And so they were all really high. I'm high on all of those. But I would say that like your thing of like, if you don't care about something, you're just not very organized about it. That totally makes sense. The people who I talked to who became a lot more conscientious had a specific thing they were working toward that they really needed to be conscientious for. Like they had a specific goal in mind, and everything they were doing, like all those organization and doing the Google Calendar and the flashcards and everything else was like in service of that big goal. So usually people find that if they don't have like a why, they can't like get motivated to do conscientiousness because it can be really tedious, right? Like to organize all your stuff.
Well, that again, I don't do that like this. We're recording this thing, and when we hit stop, I will go record the intro later, but that's it, man. I don't do another thing. Somehow it's not somehow. I know there's a team. I pay for the conscientiousness. So
Yeah.
I fulfill it that way, but I pay for that. Just like I don't touch my finances or numbers. Somebody does that. And so I've gotten more into, instead of that stuff, just destructing, which it has in the past. Now I delegate it out so I can stay in my creative lane, I guess. So that's okay. So, but it's still, I still got to think about that one. That's a little troubling.
You're probably fine if you pay other people to do the conscientiousness.
Well, I need
you.
to check in. What I need to do is share this with those closest to me and say, "Hey guys, are you feeling that?" Seriously, that
Have
would
you
be,
forgotten a lot of birthdays recently or something?
well, okay. The next one, emotional stability.
Mm-hmm.
How are you on that?
The opposite of that is neuroticism, which is bad.
Oh, right.
And I was sky high on neuroticism. I think it was in the 94th percentile, so higher than pretty much anyone. I was extremely depressed and anxious, and that was part of what was motivating the project.
So on the one I did, it had, I guess, the other side of emotional stability as opposed to neuroticism. So I'm on 88th percentile.
So you're very emotionally stable and you're not very neurotic. That's great.
I guess it's so on the three that had there were relaxedness, and I'm at 85, 85th, resiliency 79, and stability 89.
Yeah, that's great.
So I'm stable. I'm just disorganized.
yeah. You're just at one level of kind of disorganized. Yeah.
Well, so mine came out with emotional stability as the title when I took the test, but yours, neuroticism. Speak to that one, because it feels like we are in the anxiety age. Like it's high. I mean, that the stats are higher than ever. We are, in chronic illness and disease, we've got one of the fastest growing areas, diseases of despair. And that is apathy. And I think anxiety and depression and even suicide are in there. And we're kind of skyrocketing that one. So it feels like we're in a neurotic culture right now. It feels like almost the biggest scare of this test, or the biggest, the place that we're hurting the most as a culture. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, there is so much anxiety and depression, among young people. I feel like every woman of a certain age that I know is on antidepressants, if I'm being honest. So it's very common to have a high neuroticism. It can be kind of a product of modern life. Like there's a ton of uncertainty. What's going to happen? Where's the economy going? What's, where are jobs going? What's happening with technology in the future? It can all be very uncertain. And that can definitely uncertainty definitely is like a fuel for neuroticism. If you're neurotic, you want everything to be kind of planned out.
That's interesting that you're using the word uncertainty, because I have another project, kind of a meta-therapeutic model that we're working on, and really trying to work with our cultural desire for certainty, to be certain about so many things that are just subjective. They're not objective realities that we're dealing with. They're subjective aspects. And yet I feel like when we look at the media, it's these violent debates about these subjective aspects that everybody's trying to claim are objective. Certainty. We want certainty. And I feel like there's not much hope in that. I mean, we're talking about personality. I've been really working on identity. What creates a secure identity? And I'm concerned that if we're looking for certainty, if we're even looking for a fixed identity, this is who I am, we're in trouble. And even that, tell me about that concept of, find who you are and this is who I am. I'm thinking, well, when am I supposed to do that and stop?
Right.
I'm really glad I didn't do that 5 years ago, because good God, even more so 10 years ago, but I'm supposed to do that now. Okay. I finally figured it out. Here I am, who I am. So I'm done. 5 years from now, it seems problematic.
So, most psychologists would recommend against finding out who you are, I would say.
I agree, but that's a big cry in this industry is, even spirituality, figure out who you are. That'll solve everything. Well, this is who I am today. We'll see about tomorrow.
Right. Yeah. So who are you at what time? There's a great study by Dan Gilbert where he asked a bunch of old people, have you changed in the past 20 years? And they're like, oh yeah, I've changed in all these different ways. I've changed this happened. I changed this way, that way. then he asked people 20 years younger than them, like, do you think you'll change in the next 20 years? And they were like, no, not at all. I don't think I'm going to change at
I,
all. Like,
I told, there's a term for that. They had a name for it. I don't know if you remember it. I remember the study, and I remember there was like some term he gave that.
I
This,
forget what the term is.
okay,
But
I'm
his
with you.
quote on that is like, human beings are works in progress that always think they're finished. Um,
Wow, that's yeah.
so I would just caution against trying to find out who you quote unquote are, because your preferences might change, your interests might change, your job might change, you know, your desires might change. A lot of women I know got to be 35 and were just like, I want to have a baby right now. And there's no, it's not rational. It's not an economically good time to do that, but it's just what I want to do right now. You know, are they someone who, you know, are they someone who should have had kids or should not have? Like, you know what I mean? Like, who are they? And it's, things can change. And honestly, the identity element is one reason why it can be hard to recognize personality change, because you can start to get too attached to your identity. And then when you do see yourself evolving and changing as a person, you kind of are reluctant to admit that, because you've always seen yourself as a certain way because you found who you are. And so I would kind of caution against getting too attached to who you are today.
I agree, but I feel like it's countercultural, that we are looking for this. Well, when I look at insecurity, just our human insecurity, which it feels like we're the most insecure people we ever have been. If we look on social media and the news and the chronic illness and disease of despair and whatnot, that we're continually insecure. And I wonder about that our identities, if they're fixed, well, I say we, like it's not me, I've done that. I am this role. I am dad. I am Superman. I fix everything. I'm a, pro athlete. There's no excuses, no limits, no whatever. And all those things that I had built around. And then what I realized is, okay, if those are fixed, if you threaten it, if you tell me something counter to that, I can only be in defensive mode. But if I go back, and I was thinking about when you were saying it, and to say, okay, this is who I am so far.
Mm-hmm.
This is who I have been, but I've evolved, and here's who best that I can figure out today. Because I do want some congruity. I don't want to wake up every morning a blank slate.
Yeah, sure.
Somebody reminded me of that old, I think it was like a Drew Barrymore and Adam Sandler movie where every morning she wakes up and she can't remember the day before, and he has to reintroduce himself.
Yeah. You don't want that. Yeah.
I don't want that. I want some congruity. I want to kind of look in the mirror and recognize myself and my propensities, but to say I'm done. But I'll ask you more. I'm more interested just in the security. If I look at myself as an evolving identity of who I know myself and understand myself, and if I'm okay with that today, but if I'm curious and if I want to grow in these areas, I would hope that a year from now, I have changed somewhat. My identity has, well, let's go back to where we started. I want to continue to mature, bottom line. I don't really want to grow up, but I do want to mature. I do want more wisdom. I want more peace. Absolutely. And so I want to evolve. So my gosh, I'm not fixed. And if you threaten my identity today, I want to be, I'm not saying I'm there, but I want to be curious. So go, okay, tell me why you experienced that of me. Let me see. I mean, I don't have to be, totally led by your perspective, but let me know, as opposed to being defensive, which I've spent a lot of my life being.
Yeah. And that kind of like threat to people's identity, in any of these professions, like, pro athlete, or like, honestly, even journalism, or like, my cousin is a ballet dancer, a professional ballet dancer. And, these are jobs that you might not have your whole life. Like, I mean, dancers, certainly, like, they're done by the time they're 25, but, journalists, like, the industry changes so much. You really kind of have to, and it sounds like you do, have a kind of flexible attitude about who you really are, and kind of get good at applying the strengths that you do have toward the next thing, or toward the person that you're going to become, because it's just, there are so many jobs out there that are going to change, and our identities are going to change along with it. So I think that's really wise that you've
even the aspect. I mean,
there.
I've had so much of my identity around being I was going to say a parent. So I'll always be a parent. But being a father, And okay, so granted that won't change, but the role is dramatically changing. When I don't have dependents in the house, I'm not spending my day running kids around. It's like a new chapter of life. So if that's so it's even that looking at my identity is okay. Granted, I'm a dad, but I'm just not a dad of dependents that need me all the time. And I want to be ready for that. I want to be ready for the next chapter and that next evolution. Again, back to the fixedness that seems like, yeah, either people are threatened by it or when it ends, like that being now you've got, what is it, empty nesters, and they
Mm-hmm.
don't know what to do. I mean, that's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, and that's why a lot of people feel really discombobulated, like when their kids go to college or, when they
Yeah.
do retire, is because they've invested a lot of themselves into that specific identity, which you should, like, as a parent, like, you should be like, I'm a parent and I'm thinking about my kid. But you kind of have to have that, like, hell yes, kind of like feeling toward that one
Yeah.
role while at the same time being flexible enough to know that it eventually will end.
I like that. Again, the evolving identity aspect is big to me. All right. Well, the last one here is openness, which was an interesting one. So where were you on that?
I was very high on openness, and I kind of stayed high. But I did a bunch of stuff to increase on openness, but uh, I only increased a little bit because there was only a little bit to go up.
Well, the pieces of that are intellect. That's actually an interesting label. Intellect, aestheticism, and creativity.
hmm
Explain the intellect aspect of that.
Yeah, so there's a lot of research that suggests that openness has a lot to do, in particular, with verbal intelligence. So, like the verbal part of the SAT, basically, not so much the math part. So, mathematical reasoning is not super correlated with openness, but verbal reasoning, having both a large vocabulary, being good at reading and writing, and enjoying reading and writing is part of openness.
It reminds me of that meme. What was it? I like to use big words so I sound more photosynthesis.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay,
That's
well,
us.
yeah. So mine was openness was 75th percentile. Though intellect is 56. It's average. It's apparently
Okay.
I'm not as good as I thought I was.
I don't know how they tested your intellect without like a whole IQ test on.
I don't know. I don't know which gave you different options
Yeah,
on this.
yeah,
And mine
yeah,
was a pretty quick one, but intellect 56, aestheticism. Explain
yeah.
that one.
So open people really enjoy art and like novelty and kind of like good music, good movies, kind of interesting works of art. So these are the people who like love to go to art museums and things like that. One way to tell if you're open or not is if you listen to like your favorite song or like a really cool song that you like, and you feel hairs stick up on the back of your neck or like shivers kind of go down your
Mhm.
spine. That's like part of openness.
Interesting. I remember the questions on that. I don't know how I answered, but my aestheticism comes off as 43rd percent. And yet, yeah, I live out in the Rocky Mountains. It's my visual vitamins. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Music is pretty much my religion. Um, but for whatever reason, it didn't show super high. Creativity is 96th. So apparently
You're very creative. Yeah.
that's what brought my openness up. How do people, yeah, so openness. How would you give a depiction of openness being lesser and what that's probably doing to someone, like where that's like you talked about that, like you felt like you were suffering for a lack of extroversion, you were so introverted. So if your openness score is really low, how are you probably seeing that manifest?
Yeah, so there's two ways of thinking about this. One is like low openness that does not cause you any problems, which is just someone who doesn't really like new things. They have the same thing for lunch every day. They're very picky eater. They don't much like kind of like new places or travel or anything like that.
Mhm.
They kind of like to do the same thing every day. Maybe they have a really routine job, and the routineness is like good. Maybe they're very traditional, kind of have very traditional ideas about society and about life. Um, and that could be totally fine. Like you could go all the way through your life and be perfectly good that way. What can happen with low openness is sort of an element of like deep trauma and almost like not able to escape it. So what you often see with people who have like PTSD or addictions, or even just like really severe depression, is a low openness to changing that. So a lot of these studies, like that we've all heard about involving psychedelics, what they're actually doing is increasing openness. And what that is sort of doing is helping people think about their problems differently. It's not actually changing anything about like making them like travel more or like making them like avant-garde music or anything. It's just like helping them see the way out of their like kind of deep problem that they're facing. Still very mysterious and kind of preliminary, but that appears to be what's happening. So you can get like a low openness that's almost like a I can never quit smoking, or my life has always been bad and it will always be bad, that kind of thinking.
Okay, so looking at, well, if we look at this, if we look at the ocean, profile there, as you're talking about that, I feel like me, have a propensity to try to, again, understand, okay, this is who I am. These are my propensities. And yet, even when I hear you talk, I think, gosh, they're probably all somewhat on a spectrum. Because when we look at that at change, I think like with music, I almost 95% of my music is new music. I mean, literally every day I'm listening on Spotify to a new musician, and I'm listening to the radio station and new musicians too. And that's kind of my kids and I, we enjoy music and new artists. Most of them have very few listens. So that's change. With my work, man, I like change. My listeners would know I'm changing the name of the show and the tagline and the intro and the whatever all the time. And so we think, oh, I'm Mr. Change. And yet then as you talked about, I'm thinking, then there's some areas where I don't change at all. In my workouts, where I go ride and run, it's almost the same way. I mean, not only the same trail, but the same direction. I'm going clockwise on this every day. And it kind of helps me audit myself and question where I'm looking to try to, again, to solidify, this is who I am. Well, it's a spectrum. Even these categories, you may find, is that fair to say? Even these categories, it's going to show you propensity, but you may really invalidate that in another arena of your life that's very different, very off the spectrum.
Oh,
Fair?
totally. Yeah. I mean, and this is like the nature of personality change. Is it's gonna, anyone who takes one of these tests is gonna give you a readout. But then, you try a few new things for, a couple months and you could get a completely different score. One of the people that she didn't make it into the book, but she was like an extremely picky eater. Like she only ate like basically like beige foods well into adulthood. She was one of those people, like no vegetables, I think no fish, like no seafood, like only pasta kind of. And then she just kind of like snapped and she was like, I'm tired of not being able to go to restaurants with my partner. Like I'm tired of always being the one who doesn't have any, anything interesting to order wherever we're going. And she just decided to get over it. Like she just started trying a bunch of new foods. And honestly, she actually ended up going to culinary school.
That's a great story.
She changed so much that she became a professional chef.
Wow.
Yeah, she but it was all like kind of a process of like, okay, I tried this thing, it was good. I tried this thing, it was good. Like, and kind of opening up bit by bit. And it really shows you how you can move along that spectrum over time.
Address, Olga, the concept of, well, like I pulled that quote out about, okay, studies show that those who are, I guess, to some degree more extroverted or tend to be happier. That propensity to look at personality types. Here's my concern: to look at them and judge them good or bad, better or worse. And again, I bother myself with this culture that we have right now, that I feel like increasingly we're only seeing those who are extroverts in a lot of ways and performers, and it's taking over, and you can't hardly compete with it these days. And I'm seeing in my arena of personal development, self-improvement, whatnot, I'm seeing some of what I feel like are some of the greatest teachers are never going to rise above that right now. And so I'm looking at ways to help that somewhat by having them on the show, but I'm not Oprah, so it's not going to make or break them. But looking at opportunities there. My point being, though, to come back to our propensity to judge the better or, the better or lesser personalities. And I kind of want to look at that and go, what? It depends on your goals. It even depends on your, if I have a astrophysicist who's doing their thing, I don't need them to be an extrovert. I want them to be focused on what they're doing. I don't want them to be ADHD like I tend to be and be so distracted and whatever. They need to be focused on. I've got a lifestyle that fits my propensities. It's not going to fit every role that's out there. We need the different ones. But again, just to address that propensity to judge the personality styles.
Yeah, and I think what's really helpful to remember here, so there are definitely benefits that are associated with each of the traits. You could try those traits on in order to meet your goals. But one thing that's important to remember is that you don't need to be all the way to the end of the spectrum on any one of them. And neuroticism is actually a good example of this, because people are like, I don't want to be neurotic at all. I want to be completely, not anxious, never have anxiety. But you do need some anxiety to get through life. Like, very few people never have anxiety. There's this concept called the Yerkes-Dodson law, where people with too much anxiety don't perform very well, and people with no anxiety don't perform very well. And the top performers are actually like kind of in the middle. Like, they're kind of, they have a little bit of anxiety, because if you think about it, like, anxiety makes us get out of bed in the morning. It makes us get to work on time. It makes us, it makes us think about what our goals even are and what our values are. So you do still want like a little bit of these quote unquote bad traits in your personality, because they give you a little bit of fuel and a little bit of, I don't know. There's good elements of those too.
It reminds me, Olga, a week ago, I was camping with some of my kids, and we went to visit this, in my perspective, and theirs as well, this just absolutely crazy castle that this dude built out in the middle of nowhere, and these high turrets and these wrought iron steps. And I had one kid, and I'm thinking, I wish they had more anxiety, because they're like going to climb out the windows on the ledge. Literally, there's some anxiety that's healthy to your point there.
Mm-hmm.
You made a statement in the book that I pulled out that it was profound to me. You said, what if, rather than trying to make everything in the world go my way, I changed the way I responded to the world? It felt profound again as we look at just anxiety and look at how much of our anxiety, mine, has been, things are not going the way that I want them to, trying to control things I can't control, trying to control other people, trying to control other people's behaviors and other outcomes that I can't, and trying to come back to what you just said. Instead, can I change the way I respond to the world? You mentioned boundaries earlier. That's been a big focus for me. I've had all the big boundary experts on the show to give me free counseling. And it's so difficult, but that's what I can change. I can change my boundary. I can't change your behavior. And I don't need to. And I spent so much time trying to influence people's behavior. I wasn't dominating, but I'm kind of trying to manipulate things to get you to act in a way that I can handle, instead of me going, you know what, you do your thing, I'm going to go in the next room. So that felt, how do you feel like you've done with that overall? Is that a place where, would you say, okay, you've helped your neuroticism and your own peace because you changed the way you responded to the world instead of trying to make it, as you said, go your way?
Yeah, I think for a long time I was like, my life will be good when I can control everything that happens, right? And I can make everything happens be good, right? And my meditation teacher, one of the things she kind of tried to drive home for us was things happen that you don't like. And it's kind of like stupidly simple. Like, obviously things happen that we don't like, but if you think about it, like, it just means that we can't control everything that happens. The only thing you can control is how you respond. And so for me, it was this really heartening feeling, because you don't have to wait until you're making more money or live in a different house or have this or have that. It's all about changing the way you think about things and the way that you behave right now, with the cards that you currently have, and with whatever's going on with the world as it is. So for me, that's been really helpful, is just to understand that negative things are going to come up, and it's all about how you handle them and not about preventing them from happening.
Okay, great segue into my last point here that I wanted to hit with you. And it was on agency. You mentioned that. Thank you, because that in this therapy project that I'm working on, that's a primary focal point of ours, is personal agency. And then lo and behold, you talked about it here. You actually, this is the quote out of your book. You said, psychological research suggests that agency, the sense that you can create a positive difference in the world, or at least in your life, is linked to reduced levels of depression and helplessness. And I wrote down, agency to me goes back to that security in my own identity. When I feel like I've got agency, and just to what you said, not to control, it's not my power to control the external, it's my agency to control my internal. Fair?
Yeah, yeah. And this is really like the lack of agency comes up when you're like, I'm never going to be able to get that kind of job because I'm too introverted, or, I'm, too disorganized. To me, there's a big sense of agency in feeling like you can take things on because you can develop these skills or traits or however you want to think about them. You can there's always a possibility to grow and improve, and to change your own life too. And for me, that was really comforting because like I don't work in a growth industry where I have, my pick of things, to choose from. Like I kind of have to go with whatever the news is and with whatever the job market is. And I don't know, for me, it was really nice to keep in mind that you always have some control over your life, even if it feels like you don't.
Well, that's a good mic drop right there. With this, and I will put this in the intro, but along obviously the book, I'm going to be driving people to. Is there any other place you would have people go to for resources for this with you, or even with the what is it, personality assessor? Is that where you would have folks go to try this?
Yeah. So if you want just more information about personality change, I have a Substack at olgakhazan.substack.com. And I also write regularly about other things at theatlantic.com. And then if you want to take a personality test, the one that I took is at personalityassessor.com. And it's just any of the ones that are called IPIP or a Big Five.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's what I took, and we talked through some today.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you. I'm it's been helpful and educating, and I'm eager to continue the discussion on this. It's just that evolving identity. This is such a big part of it. So thank you for what you've done, getting this book out, and you're being courageous to have your own experience within it, and humble, I feel like, to do that, to look at your personality and say, where do I want to change? So I've got some areas I want to work on. Next time you meet me, that compassion score, I would like to have better.
Maybe you'll just be like the Dalai Lama and be so organized and just
probably not on that one. More compassionate as I'm still disorganized.
Yeah.
We'll see. Hey, thank you. Thank you for your for what you've done, and thanks for being here with me today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was super fun.